So now I want to introduce the boys. I hope that's not patronizing and sexist. Okay. Okay, first off, Luke Rose, raise your hand. There you go. Applause. Luke Rose is a visual effects supervisor and producer of Mr. X and the VFX producer for The Shape of Water. He's worked in over 30 shows, earning multiple Emmy, Gemini, Canadian Screen Award, and Visual Effects Society nominations. He's produced VFX for The Strain, Bates Motel, Marvel's Inhumans, XXX, The Return of Xander Cage, and Resident Evil, The Final Chapter. Before that, he worked at Core Digital Pictures and Spin VFX on genre films Suck and Splice. I don't even want to think about that.
That's 2 movies.
Suck and Splice. I was getting a little ahead of myself. Slow con, guys. And TV's The Tudors, The Borgias, and Game of Thrones. Chris, okay, I'll just have a private moment and laugh myself. Chris MacLean is a visual effect. Chris, raise your hand. Chris MacLean is a visual effects supervisor at Mr. X, a Canadian Screen Award winner and recovering graphic designer. Chris is working on the upcoming Hellboy, we're not saying heat reboot, the new Hellboy. The new Hellboy, and Netflix's Highwaymen. Past credits include Godless, Crimson Peak, and the Ben-Hur remake. Can we say remake for Ben-Hur?
Okay. Yes, you can.
All right.
Please do.
CG supervisor on Pompeii, an asset lead on The Three Musketeers and Resident Evil Retribution. He developed X-Scan of photogrammetry,
Photogrammetry is correct.
Photogrammetry-based, yes, I've been reading a long time.
Sorry.
A photogrammetry-based scanning stage to accelerate asset creation in Molly's Game, The Strain, and Shape of Water. So that's Chris. You can clap now. I'm going to ask you for tech support later on. Kevin Scott, raise your hand. Is an animation director with Mr. X and on The Shape of Water, which earned a BAFTA Award nomination. He worked on the films Tao, Ben-Hur, and American Made, as well as TV's Godless, American Gods, and The Strain. Before that, he worked at Digital Domain, Sony, and Industrial Light and Magic on such titles as Transformers, Dark of the Moon, Star Wars, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and Spider-Man 3. And last but not least, Trey Harrell. Yay! Trey Harrell is a visual effects and CG supervisor at Mr. X and BAFTA Award-nominated digital effects supervisor on Shape of Water. Harrell went from award-winning advertising executive to Canadian Screen Award-winning lighting supervisor on Tron Legacy, Resident Evil Retribution, The Mortal Instruments, City of Bones, and VES Award-nominated CG supervisor for Resident Evil, The Final Chapter, and The Strain. He's now VFX supervisor on the upcoming sci-fi film Ad Astra with Brad Pitt and Tommy Lee Jones. And that's my crew. So onward to the Shape of Water discussion, diving in, sorry. Shape of Water had 600 visual effects shots comprising an hour of film and helped the tone straddle both plausible and ethereal. So you guys are brought in at the script stage, and what did you, that's kind of unusual for VFX, isn't it?
Not so much.
It's normal? So what did you each do, what did you bring to the picture to help realize the final creation of this creature?
I'll jump in here. Shape of Water was something that had been planned and being talked about for years. We were brought in as the script was being developed as a true partner on the movie and supervised the shoot and the creature creation. We knew the performance inside and out as it was captured on camera. And that is more of an anomaly these days in terms of how visual effects works, but it always works best when we have that partnership up front and are part of the process every step of the way. While shooting was still going, Guillermo really likes to edit as he shoots, and so before shooting was even wrapped, we had a 3-hour assembly of the movie, I would say, that we went down and spotted every single shot, every single beat, discussed every single blink, micro expression, nose, nostril flare, every detail, pages and pages of notes that we then took back to the team of artists, around 160 people to really divulge all of the creative to them. It was very unique in that sense to be a part of the process all the way up and down. We do that on a couple of projects, a couple of clients. Resident Evil shows are very, very similar. And it really shows the work at the end of the day, the quality when so much time is spent up front invested in that development.
Well, Guillermo is kind of one of us. I mean, he started in the practical makeup effects realm with Necropia in Mexico, making, made-for-TV horror movies. And it's really rare. He's as at home in post-production as he is on set, if not more so. He's one of the few clients who'll go to our animators' desks, just go desk to desk, show me something cool, show me what you're working on. It's he's got an infectious energy he kind of brings to the proceedings.
And so, what was his, can you give an example of something, he handed you an idea, and then how you kind of layered on top of it, and specifically what visual tics are now present in this creature?
Well, I mean, the creative brief that we had kind of stuck with us through the whole show, and he would come in and meet with the team of artists, specifically the animation team and Kevin, and would literally act out each scene for us in our screening room, once, twice, 3 times a week, that we would record as reference for the animators.
And even before we got into shop production, we were building the facial rig for the creature. And he actually came around to my desk because he wanted to see what kind of controls I could put on the creature. And
that was the Doug Jones animation rig.
That was the. So what we did, we had scans of Doug Jones and the Doug Jones in the costume, and so we used those as a one-to-one relationship on how they would work. But the biggest thing that Guillermo said to me that stuck with me was, while he's at my desk, he goes, "Well, you guys can do anything in CG, but you can't make them fall in love." And so I said, "Yes, we can." So I think it worked.
It starts with the eyes and it works out.
That's right.
It always starts with the eyes.
So that's an integral process, how he sort of, how we work with him in the beginning and how he works with us on the back end.
But yeah, even during the pre-production, we went through a period where how does the creature eat? Because we have, all of these sequences where he's flirting with Eliza, where she's, got her chicken salad sandwiches and he's got his boiled eggs, and they're basically flirting, they're having a date. And at one point he had this mouth within a mouth, like this alien thing that was a little bit too weird, that got dialed back. And
that reminds me of the infamous egg email.
The egg email.
The egg email. So that scene where he's eating the egg, this is how specific things would get. We had a bit of logic that the egg would be peeled and would be white, that he would eat, and we sent a version of the shot in for preview, and I get an email back, just subject line from Guillermo, egg. They made the egg white, he wanted the egg brown. Everything was really thought about.
No, every color in that film, there is not a use of color in that film that wasn't premeditated. It's like we came in at the beginning, and we saw the wallpaper behind the logo on the day 1 of shooting. They put up on Twitter the logo and the wallpaper that's actually the wallpaper in Eliza's apartment. And we're like, that is the color that underwater is going to be in this film. It's like, that is the color. And we went and filmed under Lake Ontario, we filmed in the ocean, like we did a bunch of reference shoots for what the underwater stuff should look like. And it was all too muddy. At the end of the day, it is exactly the color that it was on that wallpaper.
Wow, wow. What about the, one of my favorite parts was the bioluminescent effect, and I think a lot of people were taking note of that. And I know part of it was the paint from the special effects department, but then you enhanced it. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the bioluminescence effects. So Shane Mahan, Mike Hill, Legacy Effects, who did the practical prosthetics, makeup, all the body casts, light casts of Doug Jones and such. they actually developed some UV sensitive paint that they filmed a couple of scenes with, but at the end of the day, the effect, we were able to achieve much more depth and have more flexibility in what the effect would look like going CG. So it's actually really labor intensive. I mean, full body tracks, everybody thinks when you see Pirates of the Caribbean, or you see the guys in the gray outfits with all the tracking markers all over them, that we just have a magic button behind the scenes to do these 3D body tracks and get perfect stuff. And no, it's painstaking hand-by-hand movement to match move the actors in these cases. So it's a combination of actual animated paintwork, some 3D tracking, but really we reference, there's a type of cuttlefish that glows very similarly to that. There's a squid in Toyama Bay, Japan, I believe. Is that it?
Sure, Toyama, Japan.
Yeah. That was a very specific reference Guillermo wanted, and it's not a surface level effect, so if you look really closely at it, when he moves around, you can actually see the dots have parallax between them. There's actually depth in the skin of the effect. It's pretty neat.
Oh wow! Just to get a teeny bit wonky. Are there people who are visual effects students or in the business out here? Okay. Just what were all of the different software products that you were?
Maya, Nuke, ZBrush, Photoshop. What's that?
Houdini.
Houdini was a big one. I mean, we lit everything in Mantra. So, yeah, I mean, that was kind of our bag of tricks.
ZBrush, Mari.
Yeah, ZBrush and Mari, yeah. But I mean, each stage of the process had its own software. So.
Yeah, and it's all, once you get to VFX at a certain level, half the software is custom, written in-house, specific to the production.
I read an interesting thing about, because the two areas when I saw the film within the creature that leapt out were the eyes that you mentioned before and the bioluminescent effect. But there was another point that an article referenced that I didn't realize as much, was that you were trying to achieve shading and texture to mimic the look, feel, and motion of latex and silicone. So you were going with the personality of the costume material, it sounds like.
Yeah, the kind of our philosophy was that we didn't want to affect the audience's suspension of disbelief at all. Charlie and the Amphibian Man and Eliza are our leading lady and our leading man. And anything that comes between that relationship, like if anything was off even for a second with his face, with his eyes, you would lose the audience, because it's a love story, it's a musical. And what we find is aiming for something that could be achieved in camera, aiming for something that really honors the practical crafts, is kind of an aesthetic decision that Guillermo really adheres to and really kind of drives us to do. And I think a lot of our eyes have been...
We had to get calibrated to it, because normally when we make something in CG, we're trying to create something that's, a little bit hyper real. And in this case, we were trying to match something that was practical. Guillermo was in love with the fish man, the amphibian man. And so we did not want to ever break from that. So if you have a big CG moment or a full CG shot with the amphibian man, the audience had to believe that it was the same thing as Doug in the suit, and that was interchangeable, because otherwise it'd just take you out of it. And part of our process for that was to make sure every shot, Trey's talked about this a lot, is bespoke in terms of where we would blend in our CG on the creature, so that every shot was slightly different where the seams were. Where, some shots were eyes, some shots were face, some shots were full body, some shots were just dorsal fins. And that idea
bathtub was cutting back and forth between completely CG and mostly practical shots.
Exactly, and that really helps suspend the audience's disbelief, because we tried on purpose to change that in every shot, so that there wasn't a consistent, we know it's always the heads, it's always the the fins, it's always this. And we think that as tricky as that is, because you're not able to pipeline that, you're not able to kind of assembly line the process in a sense, it really helps create that extra level of.
Well, it's once you can spot where the zipper is,
Yeah.
you're always looking for the zipper. You're not paying attention to the performance.
Exactly.
Usually, water is looked upon as part of the environment. Oh, actually, you know what? Do you have a couple of, you had some slides, right, that you wanted to show?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And we'll show these while I'm talking, because this might be, there might be some slides that can illustrate what you're talking about. Water is usually part of the environment, but in this case, it was kind of an extension of the personality of the creature. So I want to kind of include some of your water techniques in the discussion of the creature, so of an amphibian man. So can you just talk about the different, like the major ways that you tackle different water scenes?
Well, this one is an enormous flip fluid simulation. Don't want to get too technical, but this was one of the last shots that came in the door. Originally, Guillermo wanted to try to get this shot completely in camera. But then he found that he really wanted to see the fluid being pulled in and out of the amphibian man's gills and kind of churn on the water and churn the pond scum. So really, the pond scum in the upper left corner of the screen is the only thing real in this shot.
Everything else is digital? Wow.
Everything else is digital at the end. You can go to the next slide.
Also,
Yeah.
for this shot, Guillermo's so particular about is this is a life force for him. So out of the water, he's suffocating, and when he's in the water, he's back home, and so he really wanted to use the water as a character and a life force. So he really wanted to flow in and out of the gills, and that proved to be more challenging than I thought.
Well, and you just said exactly what it was. Water's his home, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so when he's taken out of his home, that's kind of the real crucial moments in the film. And there was so much water play in terms of creating a very calm home environment for him. Then there's also, specifically one very creative shot with water. I'm not sure who's all seen the movie, but there's a shot where Eliza, Sally Hawkins, is in the bus. We have water droplets on the bus window that we start to pick up, and two water droplets start kind of chasing each other.
It took 9 months to do that shot.
Is that true?
Very good, 9 months.
Yeah.
Wow, we don't have that slide, but I remember.
That was
watching.
one of the first shots in the door and one of the last shots out.
Yeah, and it was meant to kind of be a bit of a metaphor for their point in the movie and their point in love story. Right down to the color, you'll notice that the reflections that refract through the water droplets, one will be more red and the other one will be more blue. Red is her, blue is him. And they merge together when we pass it.
Yeah, and again, that was another one of those shots because this is kind of a heightened reality. We had to remind the audience from time to time that they were in a fantasy. So, there's a dance sequence that's one of those. The opening of the movie sets the tone for kind of this magical realism that we're going through, but it also sets the stage for, any of the characters could have burst into song at any point during this film, and tonally it would have been okay.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the Broadway stage version of
Oh,
this.
it's coming.
It's coming.
Oh, what?
I'm sure
Well, we should probably we can't get through the slides.
Did we say too much?
We did see the Cirque du Soleil version.
Yeah.
Oh, there was
At the
one?
Baptist,
At the Baptist, they opened
Really?
the Baptist
Oh, that must be
Yeah,
fabulous.
with the end scene.
Yeah, the underwater kiss.
Yeah.
Super cool.
So I'm going to ask you about that opening scene because I know that was one of the most challenging, but I just want to keep talking about the water for a bit more. The other two, I think,
Yeah,
this is a great shot of the eyes.
Yeah, this is the very first shot in the door and our very first shot that was approved on the film, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We had to sell his soul in this shot. And that sounds wonky, it sounds...
To the audience.
But that's the God's honest truth. This shot is absolutely crucial in making him a sympathetic character.
Yeah, if
Oh,
we didn't,
yeah,
if we didn't
and
get the
that-
eyes right here, if we didn't get the eyes right here, we would have lost it from the beginning. So the eyes were, this is where the eyes were really
And
important.
this is the first time that you actually see the character
In full.
in full face.
And that scene, if I remember, got a laugh when he first emerged from the
it's
water.
also,
And
it's
it
also
was,
kind of cute and playful.
yeah. So keep going. Oh, this was, did you,
Yeah, that's all you, Kevin.
Yeah.
this was well as placing a creature in it? Wasn't it just like a blank, it wasn't filled with anything?
Well, it was filled with smoke. I mean, we did
Oh, it was?
what we called the dry for wet technique
Okay.
that we used in the opening of the film where she's floating over the couch and stuff. The tank is flooded with smoke. It's got spotlights and a fan over top casting caustic rays down. Depending on what the performance requirements were, it would either be Doug Jones on a bicycle seat in there, or it would be a completely digital creature like in this shot.
And when it went completely digital, we stomped over all that smoke stuff. But so this is where he's fully CG here, but we're cutting back and forth between all CG and him in a suit. So we had to match Doug's mannerisms, but then we also had to do fantastical things, like spin around in a, pirouette and do little backflips to show he's having fun like a dolphin does.
Well, and he's flirting.
And
That's what
he's
this entire
flirting.
sequence
It's a
is.
courting scene. They're both courting each other.
And was there one more? That was,
Yeah, so that's Sally Hawkins' stunt double, wearing a mask.
so you only drown non-famous people, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's right. So in this is what we called our dry for wet technique. In the opening of the film and the closing of the film, we're this way. Everything's suspended on wires. There's only a little bit of the movie that was actually shot in water tanks. And that was a portion of the love scene, but that was the only time the camera was actually submerged in water in the film.
So go ahead and talk about what was the most challenging scene.
I think we each probably have a different
We all
one.
have our own each challenge.
Oh, is that true? Okay, I'm just going by things that I read online, because the internet never lies, so I just was reading stuff in other articles. I thought that the opening and closing segments were the most challenging, but...
Those are mine. The opening and close, specifically the closing segment, the sequence basically, from this shot on when they jump into the canal, was extremely difficult to get a look that Guillermo liked, because we're always trying to push for photorealism. And in this case, we hit that, and that wasn't necessarily what he wanted. He wanted to dial it back. So for when our number one job is to make something photoreal, and then we're being told not to, and to find some stylistic look to something, it was very difficult. The opening shot was a little bit different because it was less stylized, but it was minutes long.
3.5 minutes.
And so just the technical issues with rendering, running simulations, all that for that amount of time.
Everything was in tune with the score at the beginning,
Yeah.
every bubble.
Literally every bubble had been art directed. Every prop that you see floating, a lot you can't even make out because of the atmosphere. But if you really pay close attention, you'll see the duck brush that she uses kind of floating in the scene. That was one of Guillermo's favorite props.
He owns that prop.
It sat on my desk and it had to go back at a certain point. And the box of records that's in the dance scene is off to the side wall as we kind of pan around and find her.
A lot of Easter eggs.
Lots of Easter eggs. So, which was really fun, but the hardest part was that was the very beginning and the very end of the movie. And it started full CG and basically ends full CG. And so that was a huge undertaking, because if the audience didn't buy into it, from that, as soon as we fade up on the riverbed, we would have lost people. So it may not have been the hardest to achieve, but it was the most stressful for me.
Yeah, for me, the most stressful was the facial tracking and getting his eyes exactly right. In the bathtub, so Guillermo had been, he had commissioned maquettes and sculpts of this creature and concept art for 3 years leading up to production. By the time it went to camera, he knew the creature as well as his own children, possibly more. And if we were a fraction of a degree off on the inclination of the eyes, he would call us out on it instantly.
Wow.
And getting to know the creature as well as he did in the context of The creature in Eliza, when she brings him a little greeting card, it's like, that's you in the fishbowl, and this is me, the little hobo. A really, really tender moment, and to sell that to Guillermo, and we actually got him to cry. When we got it, he actually cried in the Daly's room.
And just to expand on what you were saying, I mean, with the prosthetic, every shot, the prosthetic would change. The prosthetic fits differently every day. It'll be off a little bit, so we actually had to come up with a way to make that be able to move stuff around.
And there's 5 different suits too.
Yeah,
5 different suits, so we actually ended up using a really old technique that old talking animal stuff did way back in the day, like Hocus Pocus with the talking cat, where you would actually take the plate and project it on a moving mouth, because at the time fur was too expensive to render way back when. But we would actually use that technique to blend our seams, because every day the paint would change on the suit, the fit would change on the suit, and we didn't want to make a separate version of the creature for every day on set.
And to that point, when we started to realize how much subtle variation there was from day to day, we actually started coming up with contact sheets for every shoot day, so we knew what the suit looked like specifically on that day, how it fit on his face, where the dorsal fin might be letting go a little bit.
At
so
the
that we
end
knew.
of the shoot, like his eyes would be sagging. And
So we get a plate, we look up when that was shot, we go to the contact sheet, see, okay, that's how the suit was fitting that day, to try and help our cause being able to approach the shot and pipeline things.
Wow. Oh, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say one of the most difficult things for animation was the original scope of work was quite limited. That Guillermo just wanted eye blinks, just the Dick Cheney membrane, and then slowly as that comes in, he goes, well, now I want some eyelids, and now I want some wrinkles in his forehead, but I don't want any dilating pupils, and then I do want dilating pupils. So what ended up happening is like we ended up animating shots 4 or 5 times over, and I specifically remember one time he came over to the office in a tyrant, and he's like, I need to show you guys how to act because your faces are too stiff. There's not acting. It's like, we don't have any acting in the faces yet. So when we showed him, it was like, okay, this is what it looks like when we're acting. He goes, oh, okay. So that eased his mind quite a bit, but we definitely had to do shots over and over because as the character sort of came to life and sort of began to grow, he wanted more out of it, and so he wanted more expression to do that with micro expressions and the pupils dilating and the bottom lid eye twitches and stuff.
Wow, this is like a Xanax, rehab clinic waiting to happen. But it's good because you can sometimes having too much direction and too much detail can be helpful because you know exactly what they're going for.
It was nice because it grew organically. I mean, it just, the shots and the character came to life in an organic manner.
So I want to move into the other part of Mr. X, which is there's a whole host of other creatures that Mr. X has come up with, and the guys are going to talk about some of their different TV shows and film projects that they've worked on. So I think the first up is Ghosts.
So this is a play blast render of Enola from Crimson Peak. For those of you who've seen it, this is a movie that had 3 prosthetic ghosts and 1 CG ghost. Actually, I think it was 4 prosthetic ghosts if you include Mother Ghost. Anyways, that's kind of a dark image. Anyway.
But no real ghosts were harmed during the making of that
of course.
film.
And she was the fully CG version of this. We did have they did make a prosthetic version of the baby that we scanned.
Can you see that?
Nope.
You can't see it. It's too dark.
That's okay, we can move on to the next
Okay.
Yeah, just go to the
Let's
next
one.
one. All of these are probably going to be really dark, so you might
Okay.
want to turn the lights on.
Yeah, can you turn the, great.
So
Is that still, do you know what, turn it off, turn it a little more?
Hey!
Is that okay?
Yeah, of course it is.
Okay. So this is
Pamela Ghost. This is
Javier Botel.
who is
This is Javier Bodet. So basically, this is a CG this version, we did a CG replacement on the ribs, the hair. We did a few things here with ectoplasm, and really this was kind of another marriage of prosthetics and CG. One thing that we did do with all of the ghosts on Crimson Peak was we went through iterations on them. We have versions of every single shot where they are completely opaque, and we're using all of the practical prosthetic. We have versions of the shots where, you know, we have a little bit of transparency, a little bit of ectoplasm, you know, a little bit of CG helping, and then we have other versions, and these are the ones that made it into the movie, where Guillermo wanted to see a solid skeleton inside of the inside of all of the prosthetic ghosts. So as we track transparency through the ghosts, it would reveal a skeleton underneath, and it was all very technical and very
It's like an X-ray.
yeah, very hard to do, especially with the ectoplasm effect. It was hard.
So the next,
So, Penny
I'm trying to
Dreadful.
read my notes. The next is this Snakes from
Snakes.
Penny Dreadful?
Yes. It's,
Which I loved. I love that series.
So these snakes are kind of magical snakes. This is a difficult thing to do. I mean, the snakes don't usually act like this. They're not. They don't open their mouths, and they don't kind of hiss at you and do all this stuff. If they're gonna open their mouths, they're gonna actually bite you. So these are kind of spirit snakes, or whatever you want to call them. But to create these, I mean, we had you know, we had all of our reference of what this rattler looked like. I think this is a diamondback. And we rendered all of this in Mantra with our custom subsurface shader. I think so I'm going to talk about the difference between this snake and the snake we did in Godless. And the biggest
And there's a slide for the Snake and Godless too. I think that's.
I believe, no, we're still in.
Oh, still in-
Still in
Okay.
Penny Dreadful,
Okay.
still in Snakes.
So
Okay,
here-
you'll see Godless slide in a minute.
Yeah, so here we can see the snakes kind of facing off against, I can't remember that character's name, but
Oh yeah, the lead werewolf.
yeah, the
Yeah.
lead werewolf. And then can we go to the next slide? So, okay, so this is the snake in Godless, and we built the snake in Penny Dreadful before we built this snake for Godless. And the thing about the Godless snake is that it's a sidewinder. So sidewinders move in a very specific way. They move sideways, and Kevin and the guys spent quite a while trying to get this working properly.
It's hard.
It is very hard. And the other thing that we did here that we didn't do on the...
You don't want to do no mocap on a real one?
We could have. Yeah. But so the biggest difference here is that we actually put scales on this snake because as opposed to using displacement. So each scale on this is a different model. So there's thousands of scales on this guy, and the reason we did that is because you can actually see on sidewinders, you can see them rotating against each other as they move. And again, that brought on a bunch of different shading challenges and things like that, along with the movement challenges. So, and of course, everybody knows what a snake looks like. It's a lot different than doing a ghost or an amphibian man. So we have to, we had hours of reference that we were using. We were into just looking at every possible way to make this believable and make this work. The other thing that we did here too is we gave the baby rosacea and actually comped its head to tilt down and look more of a snake, because I don't know if anybody's ever, if you worked in movies, you know that the two hardest things to work with are children and animals. So this is one of the hardest shots you could possibly think of doing with real things. So.
Hence my Xanax reference.
Yeah. Okay, so this is Bloodshot. This can go to Luke and Trey because this was their
This is a monster with a drinking problem.
So
Yeah.
this is from the last Resident Evil movie, and it's actually a character from, I forget which Resident Evil game, maybe someone in the audience knows, but he shows up in one of the games, and Paul, the director, really wanted to make him the big antagonist in this movie, or one of the kind of three key monsters in this movie. And so we started actually looking at the video game, and you know, Paul's a big gamer, and so we generally start there with this series of movies. And you know, we found some good reference of this creature in the game, how it walked. It kind of stumbles. It's got this kind of drunken lurch to it. And so that was our foundation for how it would move and how it would look. And then when we actually went to shoot it, I'll hand it over to Trey because he was in South Africa doing that.
Down in South Africa, and we got awesome stuntman to put on a great motion capture suit. It wasn't motion captured. We did tracking on a gray version of the suit that has the tracking markers all around it. And he chased me around a soundstage for a good 2 or 3 days.
You're dating now.
Hey, there he is.
So, and then there's, oh, sorry, I didn't.
No, I just, good gig if you can get it. Getting stabbed by Mueller there.
And then the next slide is for
Resident Evil. This is the winged creature.
Winged creature, which had a tiny little cameo in the games and a tiny little cameo in Resident Evil 5. And Paul just really wanted to play with the dragon in this particular movie, so.
With tentacles.
With tentacles.
Had to have tentacles.
Well, that's for the Asian market. They're gonna cut my mic. So zombie dogs, we have a Magini dog there, if you see the guy with his little head split open.
And speaking of motion capturing a snake, we actually did motion capture Dobermans for this.
Yeah, I went to Ubisoft.
Yeah, one of the cool things about Toronto is Ubisoft has one of the most world-class motion capture studios in Toronto. So on shows where we need to do motion capture, we'll go to Ubisoft to do it. This took a couple of months to wrangle Dobermans, get them trained, get motion capture suits made for them, get all of the beats mapped out with the animal wrangler. And you know, Kevin, you might want to jump in and talk about that further, but Kevin directed the shoot. We ran for, I think, 2 or 3 days and just had Dobermans attacking people, doing every action under the sun, that we then used for the animation of all the dogs and clean it up and go from there. But motion capturing animals, if you can do it, is fantastic.
Awesome. And we had about 400 dogs at the end of this sequence.
Yeah.
Very cold night. That was Halloween night 2016, about 4 a.m. in a quarry outside of Cape Town.
Well, just so anybody who knows Paul Anderson movies and things like this, you know, he'll have one of something, and then he'll have 5,000 of something else. So, you know, if anyone knows the Ospreys or the Black Ospreys, the flying planes, and any of the Resident Evils, you know, so we would have. I think we had one in Resident Evil 4 at the beginning, and then we ended up with 5,000 at the end of it. So, but it was the same with the dogs. It's the same with yeah. I mean,
So we have to run through the next slide really fast because we want to show your creature reel too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so this is
this the
Tiger.
strain?
Yeah, this is a tiger from the latest season of the strain.
Uh-huh.
All CG, and this is
You don't
one
want
of
to
the
use real
hardest
tigers?
thing. Well, this is one of the hardest thing you can do on a TV budget by far.
And schedule.
And schedule. We've actually we wanted to show some of our work from the new series of Unfortunate Events. We've got some lions in there, but it hasn't aired yet, so we can't show those yet.
So Nathan Fillion might be showing them later tonight.
Let's do, because we'll run out of time, so let's do want to show the creature reel?
Yeah, let's
what
do
was,
it.
What was that from, just really quickly?
This is from the strain. This is the Burnt Master. Half
Okay.
his face is CG, half his face is prosthetic.
Okay. Not yet.
Hey, there's the reel.
Not yet. Now this is, and that is, any moment now, folks. Here we go.
Have we got sound?
Oh, that's